Welcome to the Real Story with Adam and Sherry. I'm Adam Hamalian,
And I'm Sherry Hutchens.
and this is where we talk about all things real estate, mainly for our clients, some for our colleagues, and really just because we like hanging out with each other.
Yes. So, Adam, we've had kind of a crazy week this
Yeah.
last. Um,
Yes, this has
you
been a
want to talk
busy
about
week, hasn't it?
yeah, very much so. You want to talk about the market a little bit?
Sure. So we getting towards the end of spring market, Memorial Day, not necessarily a marker to the end of the spring season, but it's certainly as school gets out and people are getting away for their vacations and graduations and things. We had a busy last week before Memorial Day. We had a closing, and then we had two listings go pending the last couple days. One in less than a week, and the other one was just in the market for just over 2 weeks. So,
Yeah.
in our case, the market is still pretty hot. I think happy clients all the way around, don't you?
I think so too. I haven't heard anybody complain, so that's always a good sign in real estate.
Now we got a couple buyers that are looking. You want to talk about our buyer situations?
Yes, we have a buyer who is so ready to buy that she cannot wait to buy. We just need to find the right house. And I have a feeling that we're going to show it to her tomorrow. So I'm really excited to do that. You and I have already looked at it. And she's going to come over tomorrow and have a look. And I'm just convinced that that pantry is going to seal the deal. And she's going to say, let's buy this house.
Yeah, the pantry can be a make or break for certain people. I think
It's,
the irony is she likes the pantry, but he's the cook. So who knew?
yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense, does it?
Yeah.
But since speaking of doesn't make sense, we have another couple of buyers that they are on complete different pages. She wants one thing, he wants another, and we're going to keep showing them houses.
Yeah, this is where the realtor hat sometimes looks a little bit like marriage counseling. And we listen to everybody and we try to help them listen to each other. And hopefully we can find something that makes everybody happy.
Yeah.
Sometimes everybody has to compromise. And either way, it all's part of the journey.
Yeah, I mean, I know that our title is real estate agent, or in our case, real estate brokers, but really we're just matchmakers.
Yeah, yeah. Houses and people, houses and
Yep,
people.
absolutely. So, Adam, it feels like a lot of these podcasts in the past have been focused on me, but we haven't talked about you. Let's talk about you.
Oh, enough about you. Let's talk about me. Is that what
I,
you're saying?
I'd love to talk about you. So,
Yeah.
one of the things
Uh,
that we shared once was my origin story, if you will, how I got into real estate, but I don't think people know how you got into real estate.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's been a long journey for me. Um, so when I took one of my first ever vocational tests was in middle school, like seventh grade.
Really?
And yeah, seventh grade. And I forget exactly the process, but I remember that it came out. The number one answer was that I should be a real estate agent.
Oh, how
And
funny.
my perception as a 13-year-old was the only perception I had, besides it had to do with houses, obviously, was that realtors worked on Sunday. And you know how my faith's important to me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I am not going to work on Sunday. There's no way I'm going to be a real estate agent, and very rigid legalistic mindset of a 13-year-old. So
That's
uh,
funny.
yeah, so
Can
fast
I ask you a
forward.
question about that before you go on? What do
Yeah.
you think it was in seventh grade that made you test positive for a real estate agent? I mean, what were you like in
So I
grade?
think there were questions around liking to talk with people
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
liking being around people.
yeah,
Maybe something around construction or building or homes. My dad and extended family owned some investment properties and that we were always working on. So I always had my hand with that. And the kids may not remember This Old House, but as a kid, that was my favorite show. I was really into that. I just fascinated by all the different things in those old New England houses. So I
yeah,
don't know. I
me
think
too.
maybe something about that. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. All right. So seventh grade, you're like maybe 12 years old. So
Yeah, yeah.
jump ahead, what, 30 years, 35 years?
So I go to college, get a degree in construction management.
What
Uh,
does that mean, construction management?
So it's sort of a specialized business degree for construction. And construction, in this case, for the degree, was looking at both big building projects or highway projects or housing developments where you're building not so much needed for spec housing or remodeling, but it certainly has a lot of overlap. And then just understanding how houses are built. I got to take some architecture classes, some engineering classes, some landscape classes, some design classes. So,
Oh,
um,
nice.
yeah, except the one thing that I learned pretty quick that it wasn't going to work for me is because I was horrible at estimating. The diligence of sitting down and counting sticks is one of the ways to talk about like how many studs do you need in this house? And I'm like, just me. No, that wasn't the answer. But um, that sort of thing.
So
So,
you weren't really going to be the guy with the hammer and the nails. You were going to be the manager with that degree, the
right.
planner.
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
putting the bids together, going and soliciting, presenting offers, trying to win bids to build something bigger. And after graduation, took a job at a Christian conference center in Santa Cruz, a place called Mount Hermon, where I did kind of property management. It was camp maintenance. Got
Mhm.
to do a little, not construction, but anyway, maintenance type stuff.
Mhm.
And then went to seminary and was a pastor for a while, and then was a stay-home dad, full-time stay-home dad
Wow.
for a season, and then ended up coming out of that part-time at my church as it was going through transition. But at some point, I needed to get back into full-time work as my kids didn't need me to stay home with them. And real estate was always something that I was interested in, not just because of that junior high test, but
Mhm.
I liked looking at houses. I like how houses are put together. I like the design quality. I like thinking
Yep.
about, what are the possibilities of what you could do with this, bringing it forward into a
Yeah.
new era. So I got my license thinking that I would broker's license initially because you have to have a broker's license to do property management. So I
Mhm.
was thinking I would take it, or I was taking over the management of the family portfolio,
Mhm.
and then realized that sales was really where the fun is. Nobody likes to respond to a leaky roof at 2 a.m. during a rainstorm.
Yeah.
I was happy to pay other people for that part of it, but the sales part became really where I had a lot of enjoyment. But I have to admit that when I first started, I was not really equipped for sales. The idea of selling myself just felt a little bit dirty and um,
You still don't like that.
well, true, but I think in the beginning I didn't believe in myself. And
Yeah.
at some point, a couple years in, I had the opportunity to help a older woman from my church who she was a retired school teacher, no kids, and she was living in this two-story townhouse that she had owned for like 40 years.
Mhm.
And it had some needed repairs that hadn't been taken care of, and she really needed to get out of that situation and move to an assisted living. I don't think it was initially assisted living, but a
Yeah.
retirement community. But it was in such disrepair that if we sold it just as is, she was not going to get very much money for it. In fact, we solicited some bids off market to just kind of test the water.
Mhm.
And this woman trusted me because she knew me from church and my role on staff previously. And so I asked her if she had any budget, and she said, well, she had about 50,000, I think it was. And I said,
Wow.
wait, let me get some bids. We'll level the floor, we'll paint the cabinets, put some new countertops on, just give it a good freshening up and take care
Mhm.
of a couple things that were really problems.
Mhm.
And she let me do that and I didn't hire the contractors, but make the arrangements so that she could hire the contractors.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when it was all done in her complex, we were the highest sale for her floor plan ever when it
Wow.
sold. And it sold for about 100,000 above what we spent, above what we were going to get. So about
Wow.
150,000 more than what it was. And I realized in that experience, now I don't do construction management. That was a kind of a unique situation. Probably did more than I should have. But I realized that I have a unique set of skills that I can bring to the table that not all realtors can. Everybody has a different strength, but it was the
Yep.
first time that I believed that what I had to offer was as valuable or more valuable than um, I'll say my competition.
Mhm.
And what changed for me is that now when I go on listing presentations, I believe that I'm showing up with something that's actually valuable to the people I'm interacting with. And
Mhm.
I actually get a little upset when I hear that somebody has hired an agent that doesn't have the skill set needed for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I realize why people don't always like real estate agents because they think that we just show up and expect a commission. Um, but
Well, and they think we're all the same.
that's,
And we
yeah,
are not. We are
yeah,
not all the same.
that's true. We're not all the same. And it's not that I don't think that there is, 5 to 10% of the agents that can deliver the same quality of services that you and I offer. But I know that there's 80 to 90% of the agents out there don't possess the level of experience, education, that you and I have for clients. And not every client needs that kind of service, right? There are some that all they need is, yeah, they might just need a listing service because the house is all ready to go. And
Mhm.
um,
I
but
think that's pretty rare, though. I mean, almost everybody needs at least some paint and usually some carpet at the
yeah.
bare minimum. So,
Well, or even like deciding when to do the carpet, right? I mean, one of the listings that we got in the contract this week, initially we thought that the carpet needed to be replaced, but working with our carpet repair and carpet cleaner, we decided not to do that. Saved our client, $10,000 of an expense
at
ju-
least,
just by cleaning it up, and
yeah.
it didn't affect the sales price. And so it's that that years of experience. It's interesting. As an example, so we were talking on the listing side just now, but one of the offers that we had this week on one of the listings was from a man who was fairly bright. He's a data analyst, and he
Yeah.
went out last fall and got his real estate license just so that he could buy his own house and maybe save some money on it.
So
And
he had no intention of selling real estate. He was just going to use it for his own purchase
that's right.
and keeping his day job in tech as a data analyst.
Exactly, because that he makes good money doing that.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
figured on a, 1.5 to $2 million sale that he could potentially save 40 to 50,000 doing that.
Yeah.
And the offer, and he had a considerable down payment.
Yep.
And the challenge was he wrote an offer with a very large down payment that should have been more compelling than it was, but he didn't know how to write it. He just left the contract at default rather than fine tuning it to his offer. For instance, he was putting so much down, he didn't really need an appraisal contingency.
Yeah.
And he didn't really know that and in talking with him, he thought he had to have it because he had a loan. And it's like, well, your loan to value is so small, the appraisal could come in $500,000 short and it wouldn't affect
Wouldn't
his
matter.
loan at all.
Yeah.
Now, there might be other reasons why you want to keep your appraisal contingency in place. Maybe it's your ego or your sense of you don't want to overpay, but in a
Yeah.
competitive offer date type market, you've got to assume some more of those risks. And that was for instance, a very low risk thing that he could have done that would have made his offer stronger. There were some other things. Just knowing how to fill out a form and just knowing the rules
Mhm.
isn't enough to be a good agent. And I think in that one experience with the retired school teacher, I realized I knew more than just filling out the form. I
Yeah.
knew about her house. I knew the things that um, buyers were going to be concerned about that were a distraction to begin with, and how it actually wasn't that hard just to connect with the right contractors to take care of those, I'll say, eyesores, but distractions that
Yeah.
keep buyers from doing it. And she was so incredibly grateful, and the sense of satisfaction of making a difference in her life, that she could get out of this house. She no longer had to climb the stairs to the second story, which was getting harder for her,
Yeah.
and freeing her up. It
Yeah.
was it was I really felt like I made a difference in her life, and it was that experience that really helps me be the agent that I am, because we can walk into situations without thinking about, am I good enough? Like, no, we believe we are the best.
Well, I think it's hard when you're new because you don't know what you don't know. And the real estate school, so to speak, teaches you how to pass the test. It doesn't teach you how to sell real estate. You have to go out and learn that once you get your license. And it's kind of a lonely business. There's mentoring, there's coaching. Your manager, office manager wants you to succeed and they help you here and there, but training programs are few and far between. And they're not a substitute for real in-person transactions. So we tend to learn on the backs of our first customers. And I remember feeling very, very insecure because They could ask me almost anything and I wouldn't know the answer. And I'd say, I don't know that, but I'll get back to you. So I can't even imagine what it must have felt like when you closed escrow for that woman. And what a boost to your confidence it must have been, and you didn't
Yeah.
have to sell yourself. You had this innate feeling like, I know what I'm doing. I
Ye-
can do this.
Yeah, and it was and it made all the difference in the world. That wasn't my first contract. I mean, my first sale. I
No,
mean, I had a couple of friends who probably trusted me more than they should have when I got started. And
felt sorry
I
for you. Here, sell my house.
Yeah, exactly. Seriously, a couple of them were quite like that. I think actually one of my first listings, it wasn't my first closing. What was actually one of my property managers who was managing one of my parents' properties.
Yep.
He had a short sale, and he's like, I don't have time for a short sale. He mainly does property management, and so he gave me this short sale. It was like a $200,000 condo in the Keys here in Walnut Creek.
Oh
And
my
I had
gosh.
no idea what I was doing.
Nope.
And the funny thing about that one is that I didn't really have to know anything because the company I worked for at the time required you to use the short sale expert in the
Yeah.
company
Yeah.
who took care of all the details. So the only thing that really I did was my name was on the listing. I showed people the house. I answered questions. And then the seller actually, part of his hardship was he got relocated to Australia. So he couldn't, it wasn't like he could stay in the house and wait till the equity came back. He had to move for the job
Yeah.
that he had.
Yeah.
The challenge is you live in the outback of Australia. There's no place to sign documents. So I had to wait. He never went down to the population centers in South Australia where
Yeah.
there's actually consulates or embassies. He actually went to I think it was Thailand to have some dental work done, and there was a consulate in Bangkok, and it was like, all right, this is while you're there, I need you to sign these documents because it was the only time we were going to get a notarized signature.
That's
But
what I love about real estate is that every single transaction is different. And did you ever think that you were going to be arranging for somebody to sign their closing docs in Bangkok? No.
no, and
Talk
I've
about
never
not
had
learning
to
that
do
in
it
real estate.
since.
No.
I mean, it
No, but if it comes up and somebody says, "Gee, I don't know, I'm not going to be around to sign my closing docs. I'm going to be in, Tokyo," and you can say, "No problem, I
yeah.
got this."
Yeah. Well, yeah, we have clients right now that at one point we were writing offers just as they were leaving for South America, right?
Uh-huh.
For
Yeah,
unfortunately, fortunately, they didn't get into that contract,
right.
but yeah, we were like, oh, well, let's see, how are we going to do this? So,
I think the other thing, and I hope it's okay if I bring this up, with your construction management degree, it's not just a degree that you ended up not really using, but you actually put a second story addition on your house at some point, didn't you?
oh yeah, I mean, I worked for I worked for a contractor who did remodeling when I
Mhm.
was younger, and then all the stuff with my dad. But yeah, the biggest project that I did personally with while I wasn't working with anybody else was um, doing a addition to our house. It was
Yep.
originally a single story. I think it was like 1,300 square feet plus the garage had been converted, so I think we had like 1,600 square feet.
Wow.
And the it was an older kitchen, and when we bought the house, we always envisioned that we would redo the kitchen at some point.
Yep.
And it had a 24-inch wall oven that
Wow.
went out, and it was very difficult to find a replacement 24-inch wall oven,
Yeah, they
and
don't
none of
make it.
them were going to meet my wife's baking quality necessities,
I can
um,
relate.
let alone trying to put a full turkey in there at Christmas
No
and
kidding.
Thanksgiving. So we thought, well, let's remodel the kitchen. Well, if we're going to remodel the kitchen, why don't we push the wall out and make a larger family room? Because it was an eat-in kitchen that was not big enough for two people on a high chair, which is what we had at the time.
Uh-huh.
So all right, we'll do a family room. All right, well, if we'll do a family room, what if we try and reclaim the garage and then rebuild the primary bathroom or bedroom someplace else? Because at the
Yep.
time, the primary was the garage, and it felt like you were sleeping in the garage. And the bathroom that was built in there with don't get me started on that. It was not good. So then, well, we don't really want a bigger footprint because our lot's only so big. What if we put the primary bedroom upstairs? So
What the heck?
went, yeah. So what started as let's replace the stove was a $250,000 remodel project.
That's
And I
funny.
had somebody do
You
the
did a lot of the
framing.
work, right?
Yeah, so somebody did the framing for me, but I did the electrical, the plumbing, the insulation, the flooring, installed cabinets. Yeah, I did a lot of it except for the big stuff. So somebody else did the framing, somebody else did the sheetrock. But I put the roof on.
Amazing.
20 years
That's
later, no leaks. Knock on wood.
that's a whole different video. Oh, wait. That's why I love being your partner, because when we're walking through houses with buyers and they see something that doesn't quite make sense, or you see something that doesn't quite make sense, you've got the experience to be able to explain to the client either, yes, this is a problem, or no, you don't have to worry about this.
Yeah.
So,
And my favorite question to answer is, can we move this wall? And the answer is always yes, but at what
yes. Yeah, you can do anything if you have the money, right?
That's right. It doesn't seem like that one's going to pencil out, but you could
No.
do it.
All
But a
right.
lot of times there's a lot of possibilities, and it's kind of fun to dream with people. And I think that that's going back to This Old House. I think that's part of what I loved about that show was the imagination of what was possible.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes as a rule follower, it's hard to bust out of uh,
Yeah.
that rigid plan.
Well, it's funny you should mention This Old House, because we're going to start something new this week, and we're going to do what's called a speed round. And if anybody has listened to podcasts, they're probably familiar with this. And you see it in all different kinds of shapes and forms. But you're going to be the first guest who gets to answer the speed round.
Oh, all right.
And as it turns out, my first question was going to be This Old House or Property Brothers. And I think
This,
I know the answer.
this old house,
Yeah,
absolutely.
definitely me too. I mean, those guys are cute, but I love This Old House. So,
Yeah.
what about Home Depot or Lowe's?
Lowe's. The
Yeah,
people at the service at Lowe's is head and shoulders above Home Depot. Sometimes there's more merchandise at Home Depot, but Lowe's is
yeah.
always better. Yeah.
All right. Okay, good. Beach or mountains?
Oh, mountains.
Mountains, yep. Dream home mountains, water nearby.
Yeah, on a lake, on a river. Yes.
All right. Okay. Zillow or Redfin?
Realtor.com.
I love it. That's a good one. Let's see. If you weren't a real estate professional, what would your dream job be?
Oh, see, and I knew we were having this was on our list.
I think you wrote the question.
Um, Nigerian prince.
All right. I think that's it for the speed round. I can't top that. Thanks for your origin story. It's really interesting. I've kind of heard most of it before, but it's always fascinating how people end up in real estate, because it's not usually something they planned on. It certainly wasn't what I thought I was going to be doing.
If
So,
if you were to ask a room full of realtors, if real estate was their first choice, or if it was they came from, they would all say no, it was not their first choice. They
yeah.
all came from something else.
And every so often you see somebody in the office who's in their 20s, and they got a degree in real estate and it's their first job. And you think, wow, how can they sell real estate without any real life experience?
Yeah.
Because so much of that plays into what we do, I think.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I don't know that I would not have been successful starting in real estate younger, certainly not at 12.
That was my line.
But the but the but yeah, just part of it is just relationships with people, but then all my experience in construction and all of that. So
Yep. All right. Well, do you want to wrap it up for the day?
yeah, so thanks everybody for listening to this week's podcast. If you enjoyed it, press like or subscribe and be sure to recommend us to your friends and tune in next week to find out about our next story. All right, goodbye everybody.
Thanks, everybody.